before I start just getting into Learning Unit 1 with you guys, I have queried again about your assignment because I don't know, it's not reflecting on my student material. Is it reflecting in yours by any chance? Okay, so I have queried that. Yeah, I checked twice today. I checked this afternoon and I checked this evening before class, hoping that something might have come up. So I have said to them it's 3 weeks till the assessment is due. So when are we going to get it, and will the assessment due date change because it's been released so late? So hopefully I'll get some clarity tomorrow. If not, yeah, I will let you know as soon as I know something. That's all that I can do for now, but I have contacted those above, and I gave them to Friday, and wasn't there Friday, and obviously not there today, so hopefully it'll get released by tomorrow. Maybe got only uploaded today and it'll release tomorrow morning, I don't know. I'm being hopeful, yeah, okay, alright. So that was the first thing. And then before I get into what I wanted to chat to you guys about tonight, I just wanted to know if you guys have any questions or anything that you have thought of when working through content over the last 2 weeks, or anything you want clarity on from my side, so that I can answer those first, so you're not sitting there waiting to ask questions. Any questions at all? Yes, it is a very theory or history, laden learning unit. You can see now why time is given and with the less learning units, because there is a lot to cover. And at this point, unfortunately, I can't give you guidance. Yes, using the learning objectives is the best thing you can do in terms of keeping on track, because they do help you to narrow down what is wanted of you. But the truth of the matter is, at this point, they're just wanting you to know everything, because obviously we can't focus down in terms of the assessments just yet. So if we look at our lesson objectives, if you look at them, they do give you guidance, but at the same time, just zoom in your side and you'll be able to see they are very general and are covering pretty much all the big sections within the learning unit. So what is important, like I said in our last collab, is that you can't get too bogged down with every single fact, because you will get overwhelmed. And then hopefully within the next few days, we'll get a bit of clarity of where they want you to focus. So will your assessment be focused on looking at the SABC? Will it be looking at the media in general? So it's good to have this understanding as a whole to start. But again, it is still very dense for you guys. Okay, so I wish I could lighten the load, but at this point, unfortunately, I can't, because normally by now we would have an assessment, and I can say to you, right, this is the learning unit overall, but now in terms of where your focus should be is on this, and that's what your normal is, that's what would generally happen while you're working through learning unit 1. I'm just checking module. I've got the module outline open. Why am I going to Word? I'm just wanting to double check for your part. Okay, so the part is Learning Unit 3, Theme 1. So they can't have the part due because you can't physically have all 3 learning units done by that time. So I'll query that with the HOP tomorrow for you guys, because if you go by the course tracker, you should be going slowly through the material. Are all of you still working on Learning Unit 1 currently? Just so I know where you guys are, just to keep on track. Okay. Okay, you're still on 1. The others, are you guys also still working through Learning Unit 1? It is a good few pages. I was just trying to check the number of pages. But it is interesting, and it does give you some context. Probably some going through it thoroughly. Okay, cool. Again, I think what the guidelines on what the due dates have been just maybe aren't lining up completely. But I will again speak to them to see if they've changed something or whatever it may be. So as easy as it is for me to say, please don't stress, because I know it's just instinctual to be concerned that you don't actually have the documents yet. But at the same time, I've got you. I'm gonna do everything I can to either get the assessment ASAP or say to them, please shift the assessment, and see if I can use my powers of persuasion for your sake. Okay. Because it is a small group, so it's not a massive shift, because obviously on campus they're not doing the module. All right. Okay. So let me just pull up the notes for a second. Sorry, just trading places with the notes and then the slides. Okay. So hold on. Sorry, it's taking its time to load. Okay, there we go. So when you are working through the material, which period are you guys working on, or how far have you got so far with the different periods within the media history? So that I can speak to what sections you guys have covered and then speak to what is expected for you guys to continue working on it. So just touching base again, because there's only a few of you, I can ask these questions to make sure I am very exact. Up to the 80s. And the other two? '70s. Okay. So we're looking at that period of transformation, period of challenge section. So you guys have gone through basically the foundations of the apartheid, and now we're starting to look at when they started. You guys are going to be moving on to where they pushed back. Okay. And so obviously that 48 to 1960 is a really important era. And Partizan Media and Media well last year. Yeah, exactly. So in June we obviously went through. Have all three of you have done June with me already? I'm just trying to. Sorry, I have way too many students to remember off the top of my head right now. I'm pretty sure all three of you did. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not losing my mind. Okay, so what I was going to say is you guys have got a stronger foundation than those who don't do journalism first, because that content also helps you in understanding the era. Where this module differs, though, is that there's a heavy focus on the SABC, because the SABC were obviously one of the most predominant media agencies that impacted the general population within South Africa. So what you'll notice is there's a lot of focus on the SABC and their role within promoting the apartheid regime. And The other thing which is different from Journ is it looks at all the different commissions, which, there wasn't as much SABC focus, obviously. And what this particular textbook is trying to do is showing you the progression in terms of like more detailed facts. So looking at these different commissions that were put in place to give some semblance of fairness, I say with air quotes that you can't see, um, to say that, yes, they're going to be investigated, and yes, we've got to maintain a certain level and all these things, but we know the reality is they were still, no matter what, we're going to push the apartheid agenda. So these commissions were put in place, but often those commissions were tossed aside or ignored or not able to be fully put in place because there wasn't that freedom. Okay, so when we think about the apartheid regime, the SABC was its biggest tool because it was the easiest way to reach not only the white population but people of color as well, because of all the radio stations and the TV broadcasts. They had the monopoly over us. So this is why you'll see that there is a major focus on the SABC. And when you look at the content, I'm sure you notice when you're doing like the 60s and all that, when they're looking at radio and all that, it's a lot more factual than your Journ book. So it's listing a lot of facts of what happened in each time period. And the reason why it's more detailed and has more depth to it is because media studies is not just about understanding the environment in a general perspective, even though I've said you need to know that for now while we don't know how you're going to be assessed. But media studies is more theory based. It's not like Journ where you got to write stories and got to do the practical side of things. This is the theory behind why we are the way we are and why we interact with the media and how the media influences us. So that's why you'll notice it's more factual, more detailed, and the reason behind that is that it's not about the application, it's about the theoretical concepts now. So having Journ first does give you a good foundation because it helps you to understand the general environment, and then now this focuses on specifically in more detail the SABC. Does that make sense to you guys? But was there anything when going through the information that you thought was interesting or you hadn't really heard of before that made you think, oh, that's cool? I know that seems a bit weird to say, theory is cool, but was there anything in there where you were that just was different, unusual from what you already knew beforehand? Yes, the ham radios were very cool. They are awesome. There's still so many pictures that go around with people sitting in front of ham radios, and it's what I found so amazing when I'm looking at this history stuff. Yes, it's important to know it, but it also just reminds me this is just the 1900s we're looking from, which is not that long ago. It is that long ago, obviously, over 100 years, but at the same time, it's really not that far away. That if you look at the developments and the changes within this time period that we've had in that 120 odd years, it's quite exceptional to see how radio started from that to now, streaming on our phones and, playing in cars, and the accessibility that we have now in such a short space of time. The fact that until the 1900s, we had centuries without this development. Then as soon as that industrial revolution had, everything just changed. So I don't know, to me, maybe it's just my nerdy academic side coming through, but I just think it's quite cool. Yes, yeah, the Sugarman documentary is really interesting to watch. Also, just about giving it different perspectives. Rodriguez is a very cool musician. I like his music. Um, but it's really, yeah, so the reason why I ask, yes, why I ask is that we get kind of bogged down when we're doing academics, just reading fact after fact after fact. And sometimes it's good to stop and think about the ones that have stood out to you, because it just helps you to realize, one, the information is sticking in that brain of yours, and also that you are seeing the value behind the information, that it's not just for the sake of it that you're reading it. Okay, so like we said, you guys are in the era, currently in the era of no, you are in, yes, transformation and challenge. Okay. Now, what is important going forward for this particular section is to see the strength of the South African will that comes about through looking back. So, they always say hindsight is a fabulous thing. But it's true in a way, because what we are trying to highlight here is that even though there was this monopoly from the government, and there was complete and utter control through the SABC and what have you, it is in that time period where change started to occur, where the South African population started to get a voice, started to protest, started to stand up, to the point where we got global recognition, and the rest of the world started to isolate us, explain their unhappiness with us, and we actually started to make a difference. And I know often we feel quite powerless, especially when Eskom turns our power off, but there was a lot of change and things such as automation and all that came about, that meant that as these changes were occurring, whether it's technological or whether it was within the South African people, it's that change had significant impact. Because again, we are only, 30 years into democracy, and a lot of people always think of only the 80s and the 90s as being the era where, change occurred. But the reality is it was actually in the 60s where we started to see a shift in the accessibility, because obviously before that, government was so controlled and wouldn't let certain resources come into the country, which is obviously was a problem because it gave us lack of accessibility. But also to realize that fighting spirit that we have obviously is something that comes into play and has been predominant within the South African people from back then. So I feel like I'm waffling here, but the idea is that it wasn't only in those later decades where real change happened. It's that we started to see the change from earlier on. It's just a lot of people focus on that later period. Okay. And what we also saw during this period was that the people of color within South Africa, especially the African black population, sorry, I was reading African language services at the same time, was that they started to realize that they needed a bigger base to actually reach that audience, and that they started to target that particular audience with content which they thought was acceptable, stuff that they enjoyed, but at the same time maintaining that control. So this transformation was because there was a shift within our own dynamic. It was freaking 60s. Yes, that is very true. Okay. And also, there were concerts overseas, like festivals that were anti-apartheid festivals. My husband's got some of the records from back then, and all the international artists that stood up. I mean, a lot of our musicians ended up having to be had to either leave SA, or if they did any anti-SA music, whatever, they had to sneak it out the country and release it overseas. But you've run the risk of being exiled. So it was the rest of the world that actually took on this weight to try and bring awareness to what was happening in SA. Because also, yeah, exactly, Johnny Clegg was a big personality during that time period, because being a white guy, for one, was weird, considering he was singing an African language, and also because he had reached that. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the next set of notes up. He had reached that other artists, or any artists of color, didn't have, because he could release music with a hidden message. He could release stuff that would go out to the white population that others couldn't. So, I mean, people study these musicians and study their lyrics, and there's real, like, really a deeper meaning and real value to these artists. I mean, even today, guys, like overseas, they study Taylor Swift as a poet because of her songwriting. Whether or not you like her, she's still good at writing stuff, writing songs. But so it was then in the 70s to 80s where people started to speak up, okay? And what I want you, if for those of you that aren't on this section yet but are still getting there, is I want you to focus on how the media and in what ways we were able to speak up. So it wasn't just outright. Do you think that if the media, if journalists and everyone had just spoken out and said, we don't agree with this, and outright just said what they wanted to say, do you think they actually would have been effective during this time period? And if yes, why? And if no, why? What do you guys think? So during this time period of the period of challenge, it was all about subtle and slow change to speak up. So slowly shifting the narrative, slowly doing things like the release of Drum Magazine and all that. Do you think the media would have had the same reach and the same ability to create change if they'd just gone full onslaught and gone against the government? Or do you think the slow change has more power in this particular instance? So do you think hard hitting would have been better, or do you think slow change was good? Yeah. See, my thing is that if they had gone outright and gone full on and done anything that was really over the top, the people would have been imprisoned, exiled, and what have you. There would have been too much in too short a space of time, and it meant that the government could have put more power and done worse things to the media, because it was very, very evidently against the apartheid regime. So it's like treason, as it were. Okay, so you get arrested, you get imprisoned, all that. The slow change that filtered through society, which you need to look at, that is how change occurred, because they slowly pushed those boundaries. They would start releasing the odd article here and there, and those people were the ones that, I mean, it was through that the media was able to have an influence. Yeah, exactly. Biko, Mandela, all those guys were terrorists. It ended up, we did have civil war. So it was very much the ANC versus the IFP. And I'm sure I told you guys last year, but go watch the Bang Bang Club, which is about the 4 journalists in 1990 to 1994 that documented South Africa. And we were in a civil war. It wasn't black against white in this instance. Yes, there we go. So it wasn't black and white. It was black on black violence, but it was because of what they were doing to the South African people, because of the pressure and because of the way in which people were labeled as outcasts. Kyrie, I wonder where you can. So I have the DVD of it, which doesn't help. But I'm sure if you are one of those that go and download stuff, there is the film. It is based off a book, and the book is actually is better. Um, so I would read the book personally, because also it has a lot of their photographs and a lot of personal discussion that these guys went through. So of them, there's 2 guys left. So there are four journalists, and one was killed while documenting a riot, a protest. Um, the other one committed suicide because of all that he saw during the during apartheid. And I'm sure you guys know Kevin Carter. Well, I don't know. I say you should know him. Kevin Carter. He took the photo of the vulture hovering over the baby. So he committed suicide because he just couldn't cope anymore. It was after the other guy was shot. He couldn't cope without his best friend anymore, so he went and shot himself. And then the other guy who I've met is really awesome. And I'm just showing you guys I'm just putting up the picture for you guys, and then we'll chat about that. Share screen. Okay, there we go. So that it's this picture that a lot of people have seen. So this wasn't in South Africa. This was in Northern Africa, in I want to say Sudan, but I am now not quite sure. Yeah, he won a Pulitzer for it. So now, to understand Kevin Carter, he survived on drugs and alcohol. He was always high and did hardcore drugs, and when he took this, he was high as a kite. He was next to a feeding station in wherever they were with the UN. The rule with the UN is you're not allowed to touch anyone or get involved if you go and document. But so he took the photo. He didn't even know he took the photo. The other guys found it amongst his film, and they submitted it, and he won the award. And it shows that Prime has it. Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah, I don't know if it's, and it also could be, also check UK Prime versus US Prime if you've got a UK account. Yeah, well, that's good to know that there is a legal way of watching it. So, Van, when you say, what's my take on that? On him killing himself, or on the ethics behind the photo? Just to know what question you're asking. Okay, so I can, so the ethics behind the photo. When you are a photojournalist, okay, true. So when you are a photojournalist, you are taught to document and not get involved in the narrative. And it's really difficult. There was a journalist a little while ago when they were doing chemical bombs, and in the Middle East, they were doing. I'm thinking. Sorry, I don't know if I'm muddling my stories right now. We'll get the correct facts for you guys in a minute. But a journalist put down his camera, went in, and was carrying these children out that were who had chemical burns and everything. And all the other news agencies got photos of this journalist, and he was hailed a hero and all this kind of thing. But he did not get the picture. He did not get the story. His publication was not there breaking the story. So technically, he has not done his job. So it's when you get involved, there is that line of where do you feel ethically you cannot, where you have to put down the camera or put down the notepad and get involved, or where you feel like you are there to document, and if you don't take that photograph, the rest of the world won't know what's going on. And the reality is every single one of us has that own ethical boundary. For some, they feel they can push the limits, and that's fine. So the Joe Da Silva, yeah, exactly. So Joe Da Silva, who was one of the other guys that survived apartheid, he went on to photograph all the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff. He stood on a landmine, his legs got blown off. Like this was a good 5-6 years ago. And he carried on taking photos of his legs being blown off afterwards. Because he said, to him, all these things should be documented. He tells stories through photos, so why shouldn't he be taking photos? He's busy being airlifted and all the stuff, and he's taking photos. So he has been desensitized. So for him, he feels getting the story is more important to help the others. And also, like in Kevin Carter's case, they were told outright that you cannot touch these people because you don't know what viruses a South African is, that you as a foreigner have, or whatever it may be. And what it is that you don't know what you could touch them with, and you don't know what diseases you could bring to these people. So there's this give and take. In terms of him killing himself, I think if someone sees so much death and destruction in their lives, and you've lost your best friend, and your whole world revolves around drugs and alcohol, it's believable, because there's only so much death you can see before it really gets to you. I don't know what your guys' take is on it. Again, it's always a personal decision of where you feel you can be. It was in a scene recording the soldiers storming the beach and telling the soldiers, don't look at the camera, just keep going. Yeah, you don't want to break that fourth wall. Yeah, and it's true. My husband was worked for a lot of newspapers, was a photographer for a whole bunch of newspapers in KZN. And he would be at these EFF rallies and protests and all that. And he'd be trying to photograph the events and what's going on. And every second minute, everyone would stop. Oh, take my picture, guy. Please take my picture. Take my picture. That was the whole time. So instead of him being able to document what was going on, they would see the camera and be like, hey, we're important. Take of us. Smiling happy at the camera. That's not what they sent him out to do. They were wanting him to document these big rallies and all that. So it's a fine line. And everyone, even so, going back to our apartheid era, everyone had their own ethical standard they had to go by. Because for some people, bringing home money and making sure you go home to your child at the end of the day was more important than speaking up and trying to fight for freedom. Okay, so you can see why some people battled to go against the apartheid regime, where for others they felt the fight was more important than their own safety. But again, it's all about understanding that everyone has their own right to their own decision. Okay, so the fighting against the apartheid era. You'll see in the notes there where I say to you, like, summarize this, break down this, work that out, especially with the black press. That is a really important section, because the black press was, which you didn't cover in during that much, it's really about showing those that were who didn't have a voice and how they found their voice when they were told they weren't worth anything. So I think that's something important to think about. The other thing that's important is the Viljoen Commission was when we started to see a change, where we started to see the drop in seeing the laws shifting and changing, and we started to go, oh wait, something's not right. Okay. So yeah. Okay, sorry guys, the reason why I'm just a bit thin, they said your assignment should be up tomorrow or Wednesday the latest. Okay. So I'm going to query the whole, but it's up to learning unit 3. So, okay. Sorry, I just would pop up on my thing that we got a response like immediately. Normally when we send things in the email, they don't reply. So it was just interesting. I just thought, while I'm on with you guys, I'd rather give you the information straight away. All right. Any questions? Or anything that you want to check with me? So when you're going forward now with the other areas that you're working through, like I said, spend some time working on the Black and Alternative Press, looking at how they fought. To me, the 80s and 90s are a really interesting era because it is when South Africa finally got their voice. But like I said, it does start from the 60s where you start to see the resistance beginning and the change occurring. Because, the government couldn't keep us completely in the dark. We had to have some progress to stay within the South African environment. Okay. But not within the South African, within the global environment, because we couldn't go completely backwards, because then the rest of the world would be like, over you, get over this. All right, questions? Anything at all? Mm-hmm. Okay. One in previous parts? So in previous parts, it was 20 to 30 marks. In years before that, there's no point looking at the past papers because it's completely changed. In previous years, the assignment was only Learning Unit 1. So there's been a shift. So I'll raise the thing about they can't have that you can't have Learning Unit 3 completed in time because of the shift in the module and yada yada. All the technical stuff I know. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Because otherwise I'm done from my side. I know where you all are up to and going forward, so start working on continue finishing this particular learning unit before you move on to learning unit 2. Again, it's not going to be, hopefully by Tuesday, Wednesday we will get the assessment and then we'll be able to query what's going on. Okay, any other questions? After 2 ISOFs, will you mark them all at once when you have, exactly that. No, it says it's Learning Unit 3 up to Theme 1. I'm glad you enjoyed them. Yeah, some of the activities they've changed have been quite nice changes. Okay, what else, guys? Anything? Please feel free to message me if you do have any questions. You guys know that I'm easily accessible, and I will get back to you as soon as I physically can.